I don't usually get nervous. I've worked since I was 16, juggled 3 jobs in college, and clawed my way up from a place most people only try to escape. But today, my hands wouldn't stop shaking. The receptionist smiled politely as I waited outside the glass doors of the top floor. Everything about this place screamed power. Clean, sharp lines. Smells like expensive wood and cold ambition. Carter & Holt wasn't just another firm, it was the firm. Getting this job would change everything. I sat there rehearsing my answers in my head, over and over. Tell us about yourself. What makes you a good fit? Easy stuff. I could handle that. I had to. My mom, she would have been proud. She used to say, make them remember your name, Sohi. Even if it takes everything. It usually did. Mom died 5 years ago. Cancer. Fast. Unfair. She raised me alone, never talked about my father, never talked about anyone, really. Just worked hard and made sure I had shoes that fit and a roof that didn't leak. Miss Lina? The assistant opened the door. Mr. Carter will see you now. I swallowed the lump in my throat and stood. One deep breath, and I walked into an office that looked like something out of a movie. Floor-to-ceiling windows, skyline view, minimalist perfection. And there he was. Blake Carter. The man whose name was stitched into half the city's skyscrapers. He stood to shake my hand. Tall, silver hair, eyes sharp as razors. Sohi, right? Please, have a seat. I nodded, trying to stay calm. I sat across from him, ready to dazzle, impress, until I looked at his desk. There was a photo, and in that photo was her. My mother. Younger. Her hair tied back in that way she always did when she was focused. She was smiling, standing next to him, Blake Carter. His hand was on her shoulder. My breath caught. My stomach dropped. Blood rushed to my ears like a wave crashing through me. He followed my gaze. His face changed, just for a split second. A flicker of something. Recognition. Regret? I couldn't stop staring. My voice cracked when I finally spoke. Why do you have a picture of my mother? His expression shifted from surprise to something colder. Guarded. And just like that, everything I thought I knew about my life, about her, began to crumble. His eyes didn't flinch. Not a blink. But mine were locked onto the frame like it was a ghost. That photo, he said casually, voice smooth. Just an old colleague. She worked here a long time ago. Colleague? No. That wasn't some office party snapshot. I knew my mother's face better than I knew my own. The way she stood in that picture, close to him, not smiling for a camera, but smiling at him, there was something real in that moment. Something intimate. He reached for the frame, almost like he wanted to hide it. She was a good assistant, he added, clearing his throat. Brilliant woman. I hadn't thought about her in years. Liar. I nodded slowly, pretending to accept it, but my heart had already taken off in a sprint. The moment the interview ended, I barely made it down to the street before my knees gave in. I found a bench near the parking lot and sat there, gasping like I'd been punched in the gut. I hadn't seen that photo before in my life. And yet, the second I did, 1,000 quiet things about my childhood clicked into place. My mother, Amina Lina, never talked about the past. Never about her family. Not even my father. Every time I asked, she gave the same answer. Some stories don't need retelling, sweetheart. I always thought maybe he left us. Maybe he died. But after a while, I stopped asking. It hurt her too much. She worked night shifts, cleaned offices, sometimes took jobs out of town, whatever it took to keep us afloat. We moved often, always chasing rent we couldn't keep up with. But she never let me feel poor. She'd come home tired, smile anyway, and say, "You and me, kid. That's enough." When she got sick, she didn't even tell me at first. By the time I found out, it was too late. Stage 4. She slipped away so fast it felt like the world forgot how to hold me up. After the funeral, I only had one thing of hers I couldn't bring myself to touch, a small wooden box she always kept in her closet. It was locked. No key. And something about it felt sacred, like a grave I wasn't ready to dig up, but now I was ready to tear the whole thing open with my bare hands if I had to. Because Blake Carter could lie all he wanted. I'd seen his face. The flicker. The guilt. He knew her, and somehow, whether he wanted to admit it or not, he knew me too. I didn't sleep that night. I just sat in the dark of my tiny apartment, staring at the wall, replaying the image of my mother standing beside Blake Carter. Her smile, his hand on her shoulder, the familiarity in his eyes when he looked at me. There was only one place I could go now. I tore open my closet and pulled out the old wooden box. I hadn't touched it since the day I brought it home from her things. It was heavier than I remembered, like it had been quietly collecting years of silence inside. I tried to open it with the key from her old jewelry box. Nothing. I tried hairpins. Screwdrivers, nothing. I stood up, grabbed the box, and in one angry, breathless moment, I smashed it against the floor. The lock broke. The top popped open. Inside were neatly folded letters, old black and white photographs, and one crisp manila envelope that looked newer than the rest. My hands trembled as I unfolded the first letter. It was written in my mother's handwriting, fluid, careful, full of pain. If you're reading this, it means I'm no longer around to tell you the truth. I wanted to protect you. But maybe that wasn't fair. I couldn't breathe. The letter went on to explain that when she was 24, she worked as a personal assistant to Blake Carter. At the time, he was newly divorced, younger, rising fast in the business world. They worked late. Got close. Too close, they fell in love. At least, that's what she thought. But when she got pregnant, everything changed. He said it would ruin him. His reputation, his career. He offered me money to go away. To never tell anyone. I didn't want your life to start in shame, Sohi. I wanted you to grow up proud. My vision blurred. I reached for the manila envelope. Inside, a legal document, an NDA. Her name. His signature. The date was only a week before I was born. She really did disappear. For me, she gave up everything, stability, support, even acknowledgement, just so I could grow up believing I was wanted, but she didn't expect I'd end up face to face with him one day. In his office. Asking for a job. I sat on the floor surrounded by letters and lies. All these years, I thought I came from nothing. That I was fighting my way up from the dirt. But the truth was, I came from power. From him, and he paid to keep me invisible. My whole body shook with rage and sorrow. I didn't want his money. I didn't even want his apology, but I would have the truth. He owed me that much. The next morning, I walked through the glass doors of Carter and Vale like a storm in heels. I didn't wait at the front desk. I didn't smile at the receptionist. I just said, "Tell Mr. Carter his daughter is here to speak with him." The woman blinked. "I'm sorry, his what?" "Just tell him," I said, my voice cold. A few minutes later, I was back in that same office, only this time, the room didn't intimidate me. The towering bookshelves, the gold plaques, the view of the skyline, none of it mattered anymore. He sat behind his desk, brows furrowed, clearly unsettled. I dropped the letter on the table between us. He didn't pick it up at first. He just stared at me. "I know," I said. "Everything. The affair. The NDA. The fact that you paid her to disappear." He slowly reached for the letter, read the first few lines, then leaned back in his chair like the air had left the room. "So," he muttered. "She kept the child." My stomach twisted. "That's all you have to say?" I snapped. "You knew she was pregnant. You knew there was a chance I existed. And you never once tried to find us?" He didn't flinch. It was better that way. Better for who? I shot back. Because it certainly wasn't better for her. Or me. His expression stayed unreadable. I did what I had to do at the time. I was building something. And your mother, she didn't want to fight. She made a choice too. My fists clenched at my sides. I wanted to scream, to throw something, to make him feel half the ache that was chewing through my chest, but then he leaned forward, his voice softer. You think I didn't feel guilt? That I didn't wonder about you all these years? I did. Then why? Because I'm dying. Silence. Thick. Heavy. What? I whispered. Lung cancer. It's spreading. I've got maybe 6 months. Less, if I'm lucky. I stood frozen. He sighed, glancing at the photo on his desk. When you came in for the interview, I felt something. I didn't know why. But after you left, I pulled her file from storage. Saw your birth date. I knew. He looked at me with eyes that suddenly seemed tired. I was going to put you in my will. I didn't know you were her daughter. I just thought you deserved a chance. I stared at him, this man who gave me nothing, who now wanted to give me everything, and I didn't know what to feel, pity, closure, or something darker, something that still tasted like betrayal. Without a word, I turned and walked out, my heels echoing like thunder behind me. Because I didn't come for his money. I came for the truth, and now that I had it, I wasn't sure it was enough. Weeks passed. I buried myself in work, applying to other firms, updating my resume, pretending none of it had happened. Pretending I hadn't looked into the eyes of the man who abandoned me. That he hadn't told me he was dying. That I hadn't walked out on him, full of fire and fear. But some nights, when the apartment got too quiet, I'd replay his words. I was going to put you in my will. I didn't believe him. Not really. Not until the letter arrived. A thick envelope with a gold seal. Blake Carter's attorney had sent it. Inside was a letter. An illegal notice. Mr. Carter passed away peacefully last Thursday. Per his final will and testament, he has left the following assets to Ms. Sohi Lina. I skimmed the list, breath hitching. Carter and Vale shares, 51%. A private estate outside the city. A trust fund worth millions. He'd left everything to me, but it wasn't the wealth that stopped my heart. It was the handwritten letter tucked into the envelope, folded with precision. Sohi, I don't expect you to forgive me. Cowards don't deserve forgiveness, and I was one through and through. I loved your mother. I think, deep down, I always did. But I loved my reputation more. My image. My pride. And in doing so, I lost the only family I ever had. I felt tears prick the corners of my eyes as I kept reading. When you walked into my office that day, I swear I saw her again. In your eyes. In the way you didn't shrink, didn't beg, didn't break. You grew into the woman she always believed you would become, without me. That's the part that hurt the most. You never needed me. But I wish I had been there anyway. There was a postscript, almost an afterthought. There's a vault key attached. Use it. You deserve to know everything. Even what she kept from me. I found the tiny silver key taped to the back of the letter. 3 days later, I opened the vault at a private storage facility tied to the estate. Inside were legal files. Photos. One weathered birth certificate tucked inside a sealed envelope. My mother's name was listed. My name, but the surname wasn't Carter. It wasn't even hers. It was Glamorous. My grandfather's name. And suddenly, everything made sense. Glamorous was a name whispered in the darkest corners of power, a billionaire with ties to politics, corruption, even criminal investigations. Ruthless. Untouchable. Blake hadn't just sent my mother away because of a baby, she was hiding me from something else entirely, from someone worse. Now I wasn't just the daughter of a CEO. I was the heir to a legacy I didn't even know existed. A legacy built on secrets. And I had just inherited every one of them. I sat in the corner office, sunlight pouring through the floor-to-ceiling windows. The same chair he once occupied, the same view he used to admire, but everything felt different now. His name was still on the door, for now. But I knew that would change. Slowly. Quietly. Just like the way my mother changed our lives, without noise, without revenge, only strength. I often think about her now. The weight she carried alone. How many times she probably wanted to tell me the truth, but chose silence instead. Not because she didn't trust me, but because she wanted to protect me, from him, from that name, from everything tied to it. She gave up comfort. She gave up a fortune. She gave up an easier life, just so I could live mine without shadows. For a long time, I hated him. I hated Blake Carter for what he did to her. For what he didn't do for me. For every birthday missed, every scraped knee he never kissed, every time I cried alone and wondered if I wasn't good enough for someone to stay. But now, I think, maybe he was just a man who couldn't outrun his own fear. A man who let power become more important than people. And in the end, he died with regret instead of love. I won't do the same. I decided to keep the company, not for him. For me. For her. For women like my mom, who work twice as hard with half the help, and still get left behind. We started a new division, grants for single mothers, scholarships for daughters of women who clean floors instead of walking them in heels. The legacy he left behind? I flipped it on its head, because pain, when channeled right, becomes power, and forgiveness, it's not a gift you give to the person who broke you. It's what you give to yourself, so you can stop bleeding every time their name is mentioned. He left me nothing but his regrets, and his empire, but I've turned both into something beautiful. Would I trade it all to have my mom back, in a heartbeat, because empires can be rebuilt. Bank accounts can refill. Names can be rewritten, but the love she gave me? The strength she buried in my bones, that was priceless, and now it's my turn to pass it on. Tell me something. Have you ever discovered something that changed everything you believed about your past?